It's time for a Drummer Nation. Hey Peter, great to see you again. Thanks for your time today. We did a very lengthy interview for Classic Drummer not too long ago. Anybody interested in that can see it online. It's on their website for free, or they could subscribe. But I just want to talk about, since we're at JEN, the Jazz Educator Network, and you're a jazz educator.
It's actually the Jazz Education Network.
Okay, well, thank you. But you're a long-time jazz educator. It's been something that's been a lifelong commitment for you.
I'm a poster child for jazz education.
You're a product of it.
Definitely a product of it. I went to my first summer jazz camp. It was the Stan Kenton National Stage Band Camp, which was held on the campus of Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana. In 1961, I just turned 7 years old. My parents drove me all the way from Atlantic City, New Jersey, to Bloomington. This was in the days when the interstate highway system was not quite interstate. It wasn't completed. So it was a somewhat arduous 2-day drive. But that's just one small example of the kind of support I got at home. I think it's safe to say and important to say that one of the most significant components of a good education is the support that the musician gets at home. That he or she feels the trust and the enthusiasm and the interest, of the parents and by the parents. And I had that in spades, and luckily also from my brother and 2 sisters. So that nurturing kind of environment, coupled with the amount of instruction and the loving instruction I got from my jazz heroes. And I had not listened to a whole lot of jazz by the time I was 7, so many of these heroes became my heroes as soon as I met them and I heard them. I was like, wow, Louis Hayes and Cannonball Adderley's band was in residence. And what's wild is I met 2 of my former bosses, or at that
Later
time,
bosses.
2 of my future bosses,
Yeah.
but former bosses. Now that I'm 62.
Being
A little bit of time travel here. I met Stan Kenton and Joe Zawinul at this 1961 camp. So, fast forward a few years, I'm 18 years old, and I joined Stan Kenton's band. And that was how you and I met.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as I'd like to think it was my drumming talent that might have gotten me there, it was as much or more the fact that I was a product of jazz education. Not only the summer camps, but music education in the schools. I had gone to school at Indiana University for 1 year before I joined Kenton, and before that I was studying at the Interlochen Arts Academy, which was primarily a music-centric high school. It was an art school. They had theater, dance, visual arts, etc. But music was the real big thing. It was an outgrowth of the National Music Camp, which was one of the first big summer music camps in this country. You just look at the name, National Stage Band Camp.
tells you what it was.
Whereas jazz, I mean, jazz was still a dirty word in education.
In education, yes.
Yeah. So thanks to the efforts of those pioneering people like Stan Kenton and the faculty that all came from North Texas, as well as from Berkeley. They were the people who were doing most of the teaching. It was the Kenton Band, a lot of North Texas faculty, and a lot of Berkeley. So John Laporta, Ray Santisi, Herb Pomeroy, of course Leon Breeden, Paul Guerrero from North Texas. I'm leaving out hundreds of names. Matt Benton. And then later Alan Dawson. And I mean, one of these, Ron Carter was teaching. I saw Ron recently. Just did a record date with him. And Ron told me, he said, "You know that one camp in Connecticut?" I said, "Yeah, of course." He said, "I was commuting." I said,
Really?
"You're kidding." He said, "Yeah, I was making an album at the Vanguard with Charles Lloyd, with Tony." And he said, "So I was working there every night, and then I'd get up early and drive up to Storrs, Connecticut, and would teach all day. And then at the end of the day, I'd race back down into the city." I said, "I had no idea you were
Pays it
doing
forward.
all that." Yeah.
So there's an element of nature versus nurture there, right? I think in the best of circumstances, you need both.
Yeah. And why not? It's possible to make the best of circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible for us as parents and as teachers to offer that to the young, talented musicians, and there's so many of them. And it's the jazz tradition.
Before it was done at schools.
Yeah, but still now,
Yeah.
I think it's our. I don't want to say it's in our DNA, but it's kind of in the. There's some genetic coding that we get because we know that's how it's done. That's how we learned.
Mm-hmm.
Bob Mintzer gave a terrific talk this morning, and he was discussing Randy Brecker, and Randy learned how to play by listening to records, and hearing the music played live. Then he looked at the books. So that's one of the things that we need to kind of get back into the education process is making sure the students hear compositionally in their head what it is they want to say, what they want to play. You get too much emphasis on technique.
Mm-hmm.
I was just speaking with a gentleman who's the educational director at the Lincoln Center, and he told me they're doing a brilliant thing. Winton is doing a brilliant thing. He has all these students that are auditioning, wanting to go to Juilliard, and he'll put the most simple, either like gospel or folk melody, and say, "Play that. Let me hear what you have in your heart."
Instead of giant steps.
Yeah. And so being here at Gen, just hearing those kinds of
Mm-hmm.
Pieces of information.
Kind of stems from putting the music first and then the rules,
Mm-hmm.
then the technique.
Yep.
Music first.
Yes, it's got to sound good. And I tell my students at USC, I say we can cut this 4 years of study down to about 2 minutes if you're interested.
And what are the condensed 2 minutes?
And they say, "Well, okay, what?" I say, "Here's all there is to it. Just play what you want to hear. Now, if you have no idea what you want to hear, that's an issue. Then we have to start building up the young musicians, not only their library, let's say their catalog, but their desire.
Mm-hmm.
Because without that, there's just a real big gaping hole in a player. I don't have great technique. I could fake it and play kind of fast, and I always had a fair amount of power, but I've never felt that I was always embarrassed, like if I had to play a snare drum roll.
Really?
Yeah, it's just sort of,
Just parenthetically, the thing that flips out drummers, I know it scares the devil out of me, is when I'm playing with orchestral players and I have to play a buzz roll.
Oh, sure.
Because their shit
Pianist
sounds
roll
like
roll?
steam coming out.
Yeah.
Mine will never be that.
No, it's a lifetime to master. But there are players. So a lot of technical shortcomings I felt, but if I look back at my career, I said, well, I've been very lucky, but other musicians seem to like to work with me. So it would be instructive. I mean, why?
Right.
All right. So I'm a nice guy. I'm fairly easy to get along with for the most part.
Yeah, but it's got to be more than that.
More than that. So touch was a big part of it, sound, and you only get that when you have a teacher like I had who told me at one point, he just said, man, you're just hitting the instrument too hard.
Who was that?
George Gaber was the first. And then it was Freddie Gruber who finally connected all those dots for me. Real quickly, I'm taking a lesson with Freddie Gruber. It took 3 visits to his home to get to this point. Everything leading up to that was just him standing by his Mr. Coffee making machine and drinking one cup of coffee after another. And
Gruber stories are legendary.
Yeah, and just telling me anecdotes about living in New York and the night that he and Roy Haynes did this or did that. And I finally said, Freddie, you got to show me something. So he said, okay. So he started tap dancing. And after 10 seconds of that, he looks up very pleased. He's still dancing. And he says, do you see? Do you get it? And I went, no. Help me. So he said, okay. He said, look, man. He said, I'm not trying to dance beneath the surface of the floor. I'm dancing on top of it. Now my light bulb is dimly starting to light up a bit, but I said, show me on the drums. Now, Freddie was famous for
never playing.
Yeah. He said, okay, baby. So he dances all the way to the second bedroom where the drums are. And I got to tell you, Mike, it was a thing of beauty.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never seen him play.
It was all lift and this beautiful tone. I mean, it was really great. It was like the touch of a master. And for all the stuff when you see Freddie do this whole thing and you're wondering, like, what in the world is this guy talking about? But when I heard him play, it, like the light bulb just went to, 1,000 watts. And I went,
that's a great story.
I get it.
I had a friend come to me recently and he had an album and he said, we can't decide, were these drums recorded too loud or was it mixed too loud? I said, no, it was played too loud.
Well, and you can hear it. You
Absolutely.
hear how hard something is hit. And I shouldn't shortchange George Gaber in this discussion because, a lot of my lessons would be cut short. All of a sudden he'd go, all right, there's a triangle. Here's a triangle beater. Mezzo piano. You got one chance. He'd go over it. You go, that was too loud. Get out. And I began to practice whole tones on the cymbal and on the drum, and just really trying to get control of dynamics and get a sound that I liked, because I started to hear. I heard it way back in the Kenton days. When I listened to the recording, I said, that's not what I'm intending. This sounds ugly.
I remember I was at your studio once, and you were playing drums and cymbals, and you hit a floor tom that I took home with me. Just the sound, the purity of it was just. Of all the great stuff you played, that's what hit me.
Just like
was just the tone. The tone. It's about sound, we're in the
is.
sound business. People forget that with all the drumnastics you can do.
You go to the symphony, and when you see a great timpanist and the sound, or for me, the most difficult thing to play are the Piatti crash cymbals. And when I hear a great crash cymbal, and it's never loud,
it's full.
It's full. It's just it's like
very difficult to do.
Yeah,
well, let's talk about some of you've had books out for long periods of time, but now they're morphing into a CD and a book and an app. and it's music minus one, but way past that.
Yeah, we're even getting past that now.
Tell me how that works.
The word now is that people aren't filling up their smartphones with apps anymore. Yeah, but that was news.
That's news to me. I thought I was pretty current.
Yeah,
Apps are out.
They're on the way out. Yeah, it's all kind of
Streamed.
network, cloud-based, and something else is going on. I'm not exactly sure what, but I think the cloud is. It's not just a buzz. It's sort of what's happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still an app guy.
Yeah,
Not only making them, but I like using them.
Doesn't that sound funny? I'm still an app guy.
I'm still an
like
app
it just
guy.
happened a few years ago.
Yeah, it's.
We're old
but
school.
my developer Lucas Ives, Lucas says, people aren't buying apps like they used to. And so I don't know how it's all going to shake out.
Well, but the idea was you had the recording, you had the chart, you could play the recording without the given instrument.
Over there, yeah. Yeah, it's great, and the beauty of it, what I like about apps is that you can constantly tweak or fix them if they need fixing, and you can stay in touch with your customers.
Right.
And it's also available if you don't have good internet service down in your basement practice room or something.
Right.
But I think it's changing. What I'm seeing even just at the conference here is that there seem to be more and more cloud-based products.
Interesting.
For educational purposes. So schools and students can subscribe, and because everything has some sort of money-making model or design to it. So we made it available. These are pretty clever, these things. USB data card. So it's like a credit card, but you swing this out, and it's a USB connection, and then you have all the play-alongs that you can drag over.
You have everything.
But it's funny when you just don't have the mixer. It's just they're pre-formatted mixes like minus drums or minus, where the app has an active mixer. But this is a great way to make it available for people all over the place. People would get this and not. We didn't include instructions, and it wasn't self-evident. And people were saying, "Well, now what do I do?"
That's a very hip idea.
So it's clever.
So that's a book. It's a play along. It's a CD, or is it an album?
Yeah, we've put albums on this too, but it's not popular with people. As convenient as it is,
Yeah, I don't know how it gets better than that.
Right in your pocket. So
it's your challenge to keep up with what the kids are doing every year, whether it's an app or a download or a credit card or
technology. It keeps changing. I mean, one of the things I'm looking forward to checking out is, as soon as we're done here, there's a seminar about music distribution. I'm hoping that I'm going to learn something. I'm imagining that it's going to be kind of been there, done that, because a lot of these presentations seem to be a little more simplistic than I'm hoping. But even to know, sometimes you go, I never thought of that. So I've got my notepad.
Well, that's changing dramatically. So you teach at the USC Thornton School of Music? Is that what it's called?
Thornton, Thornton.
Oh, Thornton.
So named for Flora Thornton, who gave big endowments to the school quite a few years ago. So I've been at USC since 2000 and been teaching full-time for about 8 years now.
That affords you the best of both worlds, right? You have a sit-down gig in your hometown, which is LA, and you can work locally and fly all over the world.
Yeah, I mean, I'm keeping very busy. I'm doing more film sessions than ever. And, I'm the old guy now. I get called for like a lot of the old kind of stuff.
You were the fusion upstart. What happened?
I don't know what happened. The thing is, if you look around at this conference, you'll see a lot of great players, who are great teachers. And teaching, as I mentioned earlier, is part of our being as jazz musicians. It's just the way it is. It's a mentorship, apprentice kind of thing. Yet, many of the musicians here would not be here if there were enough gigs. I think a lot of the musicians here are just like, well, okay, I got a chance to teach at a university, because you don't have the bands, the number of touring bands, the number of jazz venues that would support a band touring 50 weeks a year like it used to be.
Yeah, and one of the things you were in the cutting edge of when you were young was the first of the jazz educated kids that started to populate all the big bands.
Mm-hmm.
And they're gone now.
Yeah.
So the 800-pound, I don't know what you're getting at, but let me ask this question. The 800-pound gorilla in the room to jazz educators is, where are these kids all going to work?
Yeah. And that was a question that we began wrestling with when we had the National Association of Jazz Educators, mm-hmm. which became the International Association, IAJE. Mm-hmm. Jen rose from the ashes of IAJE. Jen is... It was interesting. It was described to me as, Jen started off like a second marriage, and for a lot of people, second marriages are difficult ones, and the object of affection is doing its best to not resemble the prior. Yeah. So at a certain point, like, well, now what do we do? And now what are we? So Jen is I think broadening its mission, and I think there are a number of factors that come into play. Number one, and it sounds strange because going to school is quite expensive, so you expect that I'm going to go to school to learn a craft.
And get a job.
Yeah, get a job. A lot of students have a slightly more pure educational motive or motivation, is that they want to learn, and it's not necessarily driven like I want to learn and then get out of school and get a job.
That's a refreshing perspective.
Yeah, and I'm seeing it, and they want to learn about music, so we're educating not only players, but we're educating the audience, and we're educating people who love to play and make music because they love to play and make music. So we don't need to be kicking ourselves as hard as we were, like we're training people for jobs that don't exist. The job market is, on one hand, there's a lot of opportunity out there, but the whole world is changing. The job markets are, robots are taking over.
Yeah, it's not just the musicians facing these changes.
Yeah,
that's a good point too.
Portions of our economy,
mm-hmm.
companies that. So
maybe that focuses everybody back on the music. Maybe that's
arts,
a better thing.
Number one, the arts make you a better person, and we're not patting ourselves on the back here. It's just true. You learn to develop more empathy. You learn to listen. You learn to become more of a team player. You learn to accept failure. You learn to embrace your mistakes. You make them all the time, and it's not the end of the world. And you learn that it doesn't have to really mess up your self-worth. Okay, and so music can enrich your life in ways more than just, I'm the number one most recorded drummer, and whoever's watching this who's ever laid that label on themselves, sorry. I feel a little bit sorry for you, because number one, nobody cares. Number two, maybe I'm the 36th most recorded drummer. I don't know, and I don't give a shit, because who cares? And if anyone's the most recorded drummer, it's probably Hal Blaine. So everyone else could shut up.
No, well
Or
stated.
it could be Bernard. I don't
Yeah,
know.
well, who cares?
It might have been Gary Chester.
But they're
Yeah.
all wonderful artists
They're all great.
with lots to
And
say.
JR is great, and Kenny
Thank God
Aronoff's
they're
great,
there.
but it always puzzles me when they're like,
Mhm.
the world's most recorded. You don't need.
It's not a
I'm the
sport.
world's most what? I'm the world's most nothing, okay?
I'm the world's most me.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, I
Too
take that
much.
to heart. I teach children, and I learned years ago if you're teaching children, you have to. I look at it like I'm teaching Little League or something, coaching Little League. How many of these kids are going to play pro ball? None of them.
Right.
How many of them are going to have their lives enriched if you do it correctly? All of them.
Exactly. Beautiful point. There you go. Now, I did a clinic, and it was in western Kansas, Cimarron, or somewhere around there, some community college. And it was a fairly good-sized jazz festival. And they brought in a few guest artists, and they had these recent grads from a couple of music conservatories back east. And they were working a little bit in New York, I guess. And he's coaching a band. And at least two of the musicians in the brass section had the Oshkosh overalls. I mean, their father, I guess, had let them off the farm. It was a Saturday, and let them come to this thing. And so they're in the band. They're just like the Little League team. And, they played as well as they could play. And maybe you could get them to concentrate a little bit more, because like a Little League game, if the shortstop's going to throw the ball to first base, and the kid playing first base is not paying attention, then the game's no fun for anyone.
Focus, intensity, teamwork, all these things.
But not, you'll never make it as a studio musician in New York. And I started laughing when the guy said it. I went to some fairly serious music schools.
Mm-hmm.
Indiana University was a serious music school. It still is. It's an amazing music school. Interlochen was a serious, and we weren't coddled. It wasn't, that's very good, keep trying, it'll get better. I mean, it was, they demanded that you did your best, but because it was a school that attracted a high level of players, but it was never, you're not,
Okay.
it was, come on.
Well, you certainly worked with some demanding band leaders.
Band leaders? Well, yeah, I mean, Joe Zawinul was, but, as I mentioned,
In the sense that school prepared you for that. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but in the sense that school, being demanding, prepared you for that professional environment.
Yeah, and just having played enough, you play on enough stages, you become a little bit more fearless in terms of, and drummers, we have a little bit of moxie in reserve anyway, because it's just like, if you're a catcher on the baseball team, I mean, to be a catcher or a pitcher requires a kind of a specific attitude, right?
Absolutely. I used to know Tim McCarver, the great announcer who was a catcher, and I asked him, who was the best pitcher you ever caught? Without a hesitation,
Bob Gibson.
Bob Gibson.
Yeah.
He said, because he didn't care, man. You looked at him the wrong way. He was throwing at your head. He was just commanding that plate, and that was his, and you knew that.
Yeah. I used to love to watch him pitch.
That moxie.
That's showing our age, but yeah. McCarver and it's funny. My cousin and I we would take turns reversing roles. I would get to be Bob Gibson. He would be McCarver.
Really?
Yeah, and
Struck a familiar tone there.
Yeah, because we loved watching them on TV.
Well, I had a gig he was always coming in at because he was the voice of the Mets, and they were coming through town, and got to know him. It was great. I'm a baseball fan. I know you're a baseball
I liked
fan.
his announcing. A lot of people didn't like his announcing, but I always liked his announcing. It was
I said they say in Atlanta, where I'm from, that you were for the other team. He said, yeah, they say the same thing in the other team city. So that's probably a good sign you're doing it right.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, thanks for coming by and spending some time with me. That's some deep insight into education and playing and.
A little bit, yeah. It all comes down to the music, That's why we're all here, and I'm glad you came.
I'm delighted. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
My honor. This is your host, Michael Vosbine, and I want to thank our friends at Atlanta Pro Percussion, Danette Classic Drums, Sabian Cymbals, and Classic Drummer Magazine. We'll see you again in 2 weeks.